welcome to my podcast, A Penny for Your Thoughts with me, Steve Penny. Over the coming weeks, I'm going to be talking to some great people. I hope you enjoy listening in. Thank you. I'm just talking to Darran Humpheson, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation. So welcome, Darran. Thank you for coming along.
Thanks, Steve. Really going to hopefully enjoy it.
Well, hopefully, yes. I think we'll just see where the conversation goes, shall we?
Sure.
So the first thing is just if you wouldn't mind doing a little sort of 5-minute intro of who you are and what you do, and then we can just sort of follow up with other questions and see where we end up with the conversation.
Okay. As you probably can say from the accent, I'm originally from the UK. Mm-hmm. I was born in a place called Wednesbury, which is West Bromwich. Okay. Which, if anybody's into football, it's where the West Bromwich Albion, the Baggies, are. So I've got a black country accent.
So are you a Baggies fan?
I was.
You was, but not anymore.
When they're doing well in the First Division. But that's all changed now. I've gone off football completely. I had my birthday on Monday, so I'm now 54.
Congratulations.
So getting older and older. There's a significance actually getting to 55, but I'll probably come on to that later on.
Yes, indeed, yeah.
I'm an acoustician. I've been doing acoustics, which is basically noise and vibration, for the past 31 years.
Cool.
Originally started out as a physicist.
Okay.
So I've got a degree in applied physics. Wow. Okay. And then I've got a master's in environmental acoustics as well.
Okay.
And I've done an MBA as well, but I don't really talk about that one much.
Don't really talk about that, no. That's fair enough.
No. Okay. Kind of a mixed bag in terms of my experience, but yeah.
Okay. In terms of your family, I know you've got 2 kids.
Two children, one of each. So I've got a almost 21-year-old daughter.
Wow.
Who's very struck in her ways of what she wants to do, which is really good.
Excellent.
And I've got an 18-year-old son who's just left school and hasn't got a clue, but he's now decided to do a physical education degree.
Oh, excellent.
Or a diploma. So I'm really pleased for that, and at least he's got some interest.
Well, just to let you know, my son's 22 and still hasn't got a clue. So.
I think it's something to do with boys.
I think it is.
Girls are okay.
Yeah, I mean, my youngest, who turns 20 in a couple of months, which is pretty scary, she's absolutely focused on being a vet, and my eldest, I think she's kind of falling into a career at the moment. I don't know whether it'll be the final thing she does, but she's working as a health and safety admin type person for one of the oil companies up in New Plymouth. So, which is that's all very interesting.
That can be lucrative.
I think she's been up there for about a year, and she's coming back in a couple of months, and she might actually come back and work for me. So we'll see what happens there. So I know from our conversations previously that you have spent some time in the armed forces as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh yes. So I was when I did my degree, which is a 4-year degree in physics, they give you an opportunity to go out into what's so-called industry. Mm-hmm. So it's like an industrial placement for the 3rd year. Mm-hmm. And I ended up getting what they call a sandwich course with the Royal Air Force.
Okay.
So working with the Ministry of Defence. So I did that for a year, doing military aircraft noise.
Yep.
Got a real love for aviation and anything to do with fast jets and anything which makes big noise.
Yep.
Went back to uni to finish my last year doing physics, and then got offered a job with the Ministry of Defence as a civilian scientist with the Royal Air Force.
Oh, wow.
And I did that for 11 years.
Fantastic.
And then ended up as boss of the Noise and Vibration Division of the Royal Air Force.
Wow.
So
okay. So what sort of things were you dealing with in that role then? What was the role of the senior acoustician?
So we did anything and everything to do with acoustics as far as the military were concerned. Okay. And that was to do with things like occupational hearing loss for servicemen and women. And that's in terms of big noise and just whether they would make them deaf. Okay. Like workplace noise assessments that we do. And then the other side of that was looking at environmental acoustics, the effects on the communities around the military establishments.
Right.
So it's looking at noise pollution as such. And some of the aircraft that we worked on were like small aircraft, like training aircraft, all the way up things like the C-17 that we get here in Christchurch, the Globemaster. Worked overseas with the US as well. Okay. The US Army and US Air Force, did a placement over there with them.
Fantastic.
And some of the what I call my pinnacle ones was like working on Eurofighter, which is now the Typhoon. Yeah. Did the initial tests for that and the initial work.
Okay, so were you involved in any of the mitigation measures for the acoustics on the planes?
Yep. So we looked at it in terms of the effects on the airframe itself.
Right.
So fatigue.
Yeah.
and then looking at the effects on the aircrew.
Yep.
So it came up with what now is really common sense in terms of noise cancelling headphones. Okay. So we did that for military, and we were kind of the first starters on that. So I started back in 87 as a student working with him, and then went full time with him in 91.
Okay. Oh, excellent. Yeah. Okay, very good. So, So you sort of said there that you went on that path because you fell in love with planes and going fast, I guess, at the same time.
I think it was just exciting at the time. It's like I originally wanted to be a photographer,
right? Okay.
And then it's like there's no money in photography.
No.
and ended up doing maths, physics, and chemistry at high school as my preferred subjects, and then went into physics, and then did my physics degree, and then. It was only the opportunity of actually working with the Air Force in that third year that got me into acoustics. And like I say, I've been doing that for the past 31 years. And anything to do with aviation, even commercial aviation, now kind of excites me. Okay. And I like doing it.
Are you still involved in that back in the UK? Because I know you've done some work.
I was. So when I came over to New Zealand just over 10 years ago, I was still working on a few projects back in the UK. Yeah. And continued that for about 2 years, and then it obviously drifts out. Yeah. But we do international work.
Cool. Very good. Excellent. Thank you. What would you say that in your professional life, what would you say is one of the biggest challenges that you've had to face, and what did you learn from that challenge?
I think one of the biggest issues is trying to get the confidence as a young person when you're going out and you're talking to grey-haired people. Yeah. And it's the so-called, what are called the gravitas effect. Yeah. And just getting, so you can get your feet under the table, and you've got a good sounding as such within the acoustics, and also respect as well. Yeah. So I do a lot of expert witness work. Okay. And now I'm in my older years, it's kind of accepted. But when I started out, it was difficult trying to be accepted as a so-called expert, being relatively fresh-faced and young. Yes,
I found the same myself, actually, when I started out. In my early 20s, I was running multiple projects, but I'd not really getting any recognition for the work I was doing because I was too young. And I think it's something we do. We think grey hair means better, not necessarily the case, but it does seem to be something we come up against, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's like I became head of the Royal Air Force's NICE team when I was 26, which is young. That's so I was a bit of a high flyer, but it was like in one sense more than. But it's it's difficult.
Yeah. Did you actually get to fly on any of the planes while you were in the service?
Yeah. So did some work out in North Wales, and we did fast jet training. Oh, okay. With a Hawk 2-seater, which basically, imagine flying at about 420 knots, which is like 300 plus miles an hour, or something like 500 kilometers an hour, going at 250 feet above the terrain. So it was like, it was stomach churning.
Yeah, can you imagine it was?
Yeah,
wow.
I'm able to take control. Yeah, that was good.
So you actually flew the planes as well. Yeah. Wow. Did you get a pilot's license out of it?
No. That costs money, and it's just like this. I had other interests.
Fair enough. So, just one other thing that's focusing on your career. Is there a sort of a piece of information that you learnt, or something that became apparent to you that really changed your view on your working life?
I think I trust everybody I've ever employed. Right. And I think it's just something in terms of having respect for the people you work with. Yeah. And it's important for me to have a team around me that can actually have my back and I have theirs. Yeah. It's no matter, and I have this all the way through every single company I've worked for. It's the people that you work with, not work for, that are important. Yeah. And I think probably, Steve, it's probably more to do with that enjoyment, actually going to work and actually enjoying to be there.
Yeah, I think that's important because you do spend a long time at work. So
so there isn't one like pinnacle as such, but it's just I've got an ethos in terms of having fun at work. Yeah, and I think I'd say I'm a reasonably good so-called boss or colleague.
Yep. Well, I'd say that my experience with you was certainly that you're a positive influence in the office, and it was good working with you for the time that we worked together. So thank you for that. What would you say, or who would you say would be your biggest influence in your work life?
Oh, that was my original boss, Ralph. He was my initial boss who basically got me into doing acoustics when I was with the Royal Air Force.
Oh, okay.
So Ralph Weston is still alive. He's in his late 80s now, back in the UK. And he was just like very welcoming to me as a new individual, very wet behind the ears.
Yep.
And let me do virtually, I wouldn't say my own thing, but he gave guidance, but on the back seat.
Yeah.
So let me drive the car, but at the same time he was there
So
just in the background.
Gave you room to make a mistake.
Yeah.
And was there to correct the course if you needed correcting.
Yeah, but he wasn't authoritarian or anything like that, which is...
Wasn't a micromanager.
No.
Well, you don't put those in your life, do you? Oh, that's cool. And so would you say has there been anybody since him that's been of any real influence in your career?
Probably no. I like to think myself as fairly evenly managed in terms of I know what I want.
Yeah.
As long as I've got the back of my line managers in various places, then I'm happy.
Yeah.
So I like to know what I'm doing and have a bit of a direction on that.
I think that's very good. I think we all need to. I think if you want to achieve anything, you need to have a goal in mind, don't you?
Yeah.
If you haven't got that goal in mind, you're kind of rudderless to a certain extent, which can be quite challenging. So that's excellent. What about outside of work? What's your passions outside of work? I mean, I know one of them is going to involve two wheels and pedals, but is there anything else?
Oh,
Let's talk about your cycling.
There's a couple of things. So I am an avid cyclist. So I cycled here today to have this chat.
You're a competitive cyclist as well.
I'm a very competitive cyclist. Yeah. So I do age group racing, used to race as a junior.
Yeah.
We've just done the bike challenge in New Zealand, which is all about getting people to get encouraged to ride a bike during February.
Yep.
And got the whole of the office in Tonkin and Taylor motivated to actually ride.
Excellent.
I think we came second overall in our class.
Well done.
But yeah, anything to do with two wheels, I get involved in. I'm also the chairperson of a local cycle club here in Christchurch.
Yeah.
So we've been reasonably successful, and we did a hill climb last night, which was very challenging because it was super, super windy.
Yes, it was pretty windy yesterday.
Yeah. There was a lot of people saying that was hard.
So what sort of distances do you ride over?
Anything from just if I go out for a social ride, either on myself or my mates, then it's anything from like a couple of hours up to maybe 3.5 hours.
Okay.
So you're doing around, or it could be anything if it's hilly, around 45k up to 80k easily.
Yeah.
And if we're doing competitions, then it's usually around 90 to 95.
Okay. Wow, that's a long way to cycle.
Yeah, but it's enjoyable. It's my way of switching off.
Yeah. Is it something you've done all the way through your life?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've always cycled to work.
Yeah.
I've only commuted once when I was in Manchester, and that was bad. That was a bad period.
Yeah.
But it's a way for me to switch off. It just gets rid of that. It allows me to concentrate on myself.
Yeah.
Because it's my own time.
Yeah.
And I can just think things through and just have a bit of escapism.
Yeah.
And then when I come back, I'm fresh.
Mind's
cleared.
Yeah.
Body feels good.
Excellent. Yeah, I probably need to do a bit more exercise myself than I currently do, unfortunately.
It just gets the endorphins going.
It does, yeah, absolutely it does. Yeah, and I think that's something that you're getting that balance right between work and life, and also making sure you make time for yourself is really important.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I've found over the last couple of 3 years, probably since the beginning of COVID really, is that your mental health takes a real battering when you're stressed, and having a way of dealing with that stress, like for you it's cycling, for me I haven't really found a proper thing to deal with it, but in the UK it used to be going to football, but I don't do that over here. But having that thing that's an outlet that allows you to deal with the stress is really important, and I think we all need to really focus on our own health.
You need it. It's the way for me to recharge as well. And if I don't do it, I'm very, very grumpy, and you just have to ask my kids about that.
Fair enough. I don't think I will, but maybe. So what else? Is there anything else you do outside of work?
Because bikes are like, you have to tinker with them. Yeah. I've got an old classic car, an old Triumph that I like messing with.
Okay.
And I've just got it back on the road, having had a few issues with electronics on it.
Okay.
And it's absolutely running like a new car. And it's, so I like old things, mechanical, anything that I can do with my hands.
Yeah.
Like DIY, but a bit more than just like painting walls. I'll make things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
It's the artistic element and me thinking just things through.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. So have you taken it out on any long drives?
Yeah.
Where you been?
When I say long drives, you've got to think it is a classic car, and it is temperamental.
Classic car insurance.
It's temperamental. So we've done Acarora.
Yeah.
That's kind of long for this sort of car. It's a little 2-seater. It's not very. It's tiny compared to like modern days. Even like having a big ute by the side of your Ranger.
Yeah.
It's like you just look at the top of the wheels and that's it.
Fair enough. Yeah. It's not a nice feeling actually. When we were back in the UK, my wife had a Triumph. I think it was a Stag that she had. And it was so low to the ground. I do remember on one occasion we was on a motorway driving the car with the top down, and we went past this big articulated truck, and we were not even halfway up the wheels of the truck, and it was just like, if they don't see us, we're in real trouble here. Just run us over.
Yeah, well, according to my son, that the car's called a cheese grater because if it flips, then that's the top of your head gone. It's like, but it's nice to do that because that's again my time in the garage and just switching off.
Did your son get involved with that at all? Or does he just want to sit in the car when you're driving?
He wants to sit in the car, but he's 18 and he's impressionable, so he wants to get his own car now so he can actually modify it.
Yeah.
And I'm slightly resistant because the ones that he wants are just way out of his price bracket and insurance as well.
Well, insurance in New Zealand, though, is really cheap, isn't it? Because you don't actually have to have it, which I really don't understand. It seems a bit strange.
Well, he wants a 2-litre turbo WRX. So it's like, God.
Yes. It's nice to dream, isn't it? It's nice to dream.
I had one of those when I was 32 as a midlife crisis. So I've gone through that phase.
That's when I bought my Harley Davidson, my midlife crisis. But it was really a bit later than my midlife, really. Only about 8 years ago. But never mind. Okay, so have you joined any of the classic car clubs that there are around in Christchurch? There's quite a few of them.
No, I haven't. I'm kind of pushed in terms of time.
Yeah.
Because I do my cycling, which is basically two days a week.
Yeah.
This is looking after the cycle club. And then it's I like my weekends to be my weekends. Yeah. So that's my time.
Yeah.
Or family time.
Yeah.
So that's kind of really precious to me.
Okay.
But I did do in the UK, because I had classic cars over there.
Yeah.
But it's something I should do.
Yeah, because there's quite a few of them around Christchurch.
There is, but I just look at the demographics within the club. It's like
you'd be the youngest one there.
I would be, even
quite a long way.
Yeah, even in my mid-50s. It's like no.
Yeah, there's a couple that I've seen. There's one that's like a swap meet type thing out on McLean's Island. Yeah. So do you ever go out to that? And
there's a meet coming up on the AMP showground this Sunday. The classic car show. So now the car's working. Yeah, it can actually physically get there under its own power.
Excellent.
So that's all right.
So you're going to drive there?
Yep. Yeah.
Put it on display.
Yeah. Take my son and he'll draw all the. There may be a few Lamborghinis or Ferraris there, so we'll draw on those.
Yeah, of course.
And then I'll have my little car in the corner.
Get it nice and clean before you go.
It's super clean at the moment.
Yeah. What colour?
British Racing Green.
Of course it is. Fantastic, excellent. Do you do anything else? It sounds like you've got a pretty full-on time, really. You're cycling and looking after the classic car. Is there anything else you do outside of work?
It's mainly in terms of things around the house and stuff with the kids. Yeah. So
your kids are into cycling, or your daughter is?
They used to be.
Not anymore.
My daughter used to be, but then she went overseas doing Camp America for 2 years.
Yeah.
Got a boyfriend, and that changed. And then
is the boyfriend over in the US?
She did have one in the US. That's gone. Amicable. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, we won't probe on that one. That's probably not something we want to discuss really. In terms of other things, do you read at all? Read books?
No, I'm very sad when it comes to like reading. I do watch a lot of documentaries on TV.
Yeah.
So I like that in terms of that, getting that side, and I will read articles on, like technical articles and stuff. But in terms of works fiction, no. I used to.
But what do you remember what the last book that you read was?
Might have been a Tom Clancy book. Yeah. I like action stuff, and I do watch films, so certain sci-fi stuff is I'm not a sci-fi geek.
No. But, there's nothing wrong with sci-fi. Yeah. It's a massive genre now. There's so many different types of sci-fi out there. It's quite remarkable, really.
Yeah.
Okay. What about music? Do you listen to music at all?
Oh, yeah. I've got a very wide, varied collection of music.
Okay.
So I'm into Norwegian electronic at the moment, which is
really
winds my kids up like no end.
I can imagine it does.
Yeah.
Bit of Bjork.
Oh no! This is far more severe than that.
Oh God!
So there's a band called Reiskop, which is it's really really good. So I being a child of the 80s and early 90s, when I was like going out, it was great for dance music. Yeah, and I'm still into that.
Excellent.
So mid 90s.
So if I was to ask you to say if there's a singer, a musician, or a band that you've never had the chance to see but really want to, who would that be?
Probably English group called Kasabian.
Oh, I remember Kasabian. Okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of rock.
It's kind of
it's alternative.
Progressive
prog rock. Yeah, prog rock. Yeah. But some awesome, like, just some of the drums, guitars. Yeah. Yeah, it's your kind of if you've never listened to it, I'd recommend just listen to.
I do remember them. That was probably 80s, early 80s.
Yeah, and they got 90s. It's 1990s. Yeah. And they got into the noughties as well. So
yeah, excellent. And what was the last concert you went to?
I took my son when Iron Maiden came over here. Yeah, that was probably the last one. Right. And we went to see Iron Maiden in the Horncastle, and my son was 10 years old at the time. Okay, so that would be 8 years ago. 8 years ago. I did buy tickets to go and see Aurora in Auckland for last weekend, but change of plans, so that got cancelled. They got cancelled. Yeah, and she's Norwegian as well. So
you like your Norwegians? I
think so. Yeah, it's a bit strange.
A bit of a Scandinavian thing going on there.
Yeah, won't go there.
Okay, if you could actually go back to your 20-year-old self and give yourself a piece of advice, just one piece of advice, what do you think that would be?
Oh, it'd be financial advice, I'm afraid, in terms of investment. Yeah, bought a house on an end of terrace, and the one next door was going for sale cheaper, and I wish I bought it. Yeah, because the prices in that area just went through the roof about 5 or 8 years later. Yeah, I remember I had a flat in North London that I bought when I was probably about 25. Maybe 26, and it was, I bought it for, I think it cost me £45,000 at the time. So it's sounds about it's pretty. When I look back on it now, it's really cheap, and coincidentally, it was in the same block of flats that my mum used to live in when she met my dad, which was really rather weird. But that flat, I bought that flat and I sold it 8 years later for about £90,000. So I doubled my money, and I thought I'd done really well. But then there was a technical college just down the road from where that flat was that turned into a university. And when it turned into a university, all the property values went up by about 400%. So it was a year after I sold it that flat went back on the market for just under £350,000. I bet you were kicking yourself. I was not happy. I was not happy at all about that. It's just timing. I think a lot of the time, in the property market in particular, it's all about timing. That's you buy when you buy and you sell when you sell. And if you get it right, you make money. If you don't, you lose money. But I think you're right. The piece of advice that I think we should all take on board is those investments early on make a real difference later on. We were talking before we came on air about pensions, and I really regret that I didn't put more money in my pension fund, because I'm 55 in 2 months' time, and I'd love to be able to retire, but my pension fund is nowhere near enough, so I'm going to carry on working because I've got no choice. Yeah, I've got the same. I've given that advice to my children, because they're both obviously, they've got Kiwi savers, and I've said, look, every time you get a reasonable pay increase or you jump jobs, just increase your personal contribution, just to put in a bit of extra money in the pot. Absolutely, yeah. You think about it, when you're young, you think that your retirement's a long way away. Oh, but 2 minutes later, there you are looking at your retirement thinking, where the hell how am I going to afford my life? Well, I think that's my biggest worry at the moment in terms of going forward. It's just financial security when I stop working. Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of that, just sort of going into that a bit more detail, what are your plans for your retirement? You're 55 next year? So 55. So I've got one pension I can dip into, but that's not going to happen. That'll be invested, and I think by the look of it, Steve, I'll be working until I'm 65.
Right. What do you I mean? If you had a, what is it you have in mind for what's going to happen when you reach that age where you do retire? What do you plan to do?
I'm going to have to downsize the house for a start. But it's got to have a big garage though.
Yeah, to put the cars in.
Yeah, and the bikes.
and the bikes. Yeah. So you're going to carry on cycling.
Yeah.
Do you think you're going to stay in New Zealand?
Yeah. I'm here for life. Really. Right. Can bury me somewhere.
Fair enough. Why is that? Why do you want to stay in New Zealand?
It's just the quality of life.
Yeah.
Went back to the UK to see family in July.
Yeah.
It was great, but this is home. This is definitely home. The kids love it here.
Do you think they're going to stay?
Yeah, they'll stay. I think my daughter she's doing an OE, like she's done it 2 years in a row at the moment.
Yeah.
She'll come back and she wants to do a nursing degree, so she wants to stay here. She's got friends here, obviously in terms of that's where she spent more of her life here.
Yeah.
Same with my son.
Yeah.
I've got no immediate need to do anything else of what I'm doing at Mo.
Right.
So there's no need, there's no requirement to move.
Yeah.
Like Christchurch is a good place as well.
It is. I mean, it's a good place to live for sure. I mean, Chrissy and I have been talking about what we want to do, and part of the reason for that trip I mentioned to Italy is that we have this dream of retiring to Tuscany.
Yeah, it's
just
nice.
Buying a property somewhere near a vineyard on a slope, looking at the ocean, and just like that's it. We're here now.
Yeah.
I think we see ourselves doing a lot of travelling. And the one thing, one disadvantage to living in New Zealand is it's a long way from everywhere.
It is.
It takes a long time to get anywhere, and it costs a lot of money to get there. So, if we do want to do the travelling, which we do, then staying in New Zealand is going to limit what we can where we can travel to. Certainly, once we both stop working. So, I think it's something that you've got to have that plan and hopefully work your way to it and sort of then spend your twilight years doing whatever it is you want to do.
Yeah.
So you think you're going to keep the cycling going till your legs fall off? Basically.
I'll do that, otherwise I'll go insane. Yeah. It's like I was given a lift to we're doing a cycle event last night, and I was given a lift to a guy who's 87.
Yeah.
And he still races. Bruce does, and he was helping out. So if we can keep going at his age, then that would be great.
If you actually do keep the exercise up, it's kind of does your health, your physical health good, but it also does your mental health good, doesn't it? I think there's a lot to be said for being as active as you can be, and I certainly want to try and be as active as I can be. I need to do something with myself, I think.
Well, it's like they say, when you got two types of people when you retire. You either those people who are just vegetate in front of the TV with no friends and nothing happening, or those which are just live life to the full.
Yeah.
And I'm in the latter. I've got so many things that I want to do.
Well, come on. Tell me.
Like, I've got a wish list of cars, but that's financially related.
Yeah.
There's the travel as well, like you're saying.
Yeah. So where do you want to go?
I want to go back to Canada.
Right.
In terms of like North Canada, the Rockies. So looking at that, Banff. So there's that.
For skiing or for cycling or just?
It's just a bit of both, to be honest.
Right.
So it's just the natural environment. It's a bit like, I'd say, New Zealand, but on a slightly bigger scale. Yeah. And
never been to Canada. I keep missing it. I keep thinking of the US and not wanting to go to the US and forgetting that Canada's there.
Yeah, Canada's better. I've done the US road trip.
I mean, I did have an ambition a while ago of actually taking a Harley and riding Route 66. But when I started to look at it, there's a lot of issues with doing that at the moment, because the Route 66 has basically died. It's all taken over by the main state highways now, and you can't really follow the actual route of Route 66, which is like kind of an iconic route from east to west across the US. So you'd be driving or riding around in places that are basically dead all of the time because the road's gone. Nobody's using it anymore, and it just feels like it'd be pretty depressing to do it, to be honest. And the other side of that is I don't really like the US, if I'm honest. I just everything that comes out of that place just drives me mad.
The natural environment. I've got some good. I'm doing some work at the moment, and we've got some US colleagues working on it.
Yeah.
So on a little project, and they're great. Yeah. They work from San Diego.
Okay.
And that's California's nice.
California's okay. Yeah. I did go over to Las Vegas when I was working in the Middle East. The business I was working for was based in Las Vegas, so I had to go to the head office, and I thought that place. I mean, like the problem for me going to Las Vegas is I went there to work. So I was working during the day, and pretty much everybody else in Las Vegas was going out and getting drunk during the day.
Yep.
So I just saw it in the daylight all the time, sober, and it was just so plastic and depressing as a place.
Well, you can imagine that place just revolves around casinos and gambling.
Yeah,
and it's
it
like,
does. It really does. And it's I think it was when I went there, I do remember seeing people at the slot machines in the hotel when I got up to go and have breakfast in the morning, and I'd come back after 7 or 8 hours at work, and the same person would be on the same slot machine, and they'd be there all day. And their 1 or 2 weeks holiday they got a year, they came to Las Vegas praying that they'd get a big win so they could stop work.
Yeah.
And I just thought that whole cycle is just so depressing. If your work life is that bad, why are you still doing it?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I have a very jaded view, I'm afraid, of the US, unfortunately. Never mind. So in terms of other places you want to go, so Banff in Canada sounds like it'd be awesome. Is there anywhere else that you're really keen to go?
If the opportunity ever came, Antarctica.
Right.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
We nearly got there.
We nearly got there.
We did very nearly. Scott Base would have been, that was a project that we were close to winning, I think. I still keep getting updates on how badly it's going. But should have taken ACOM on. We'd have done a good job on that one.
Good. Yeah. I think Japan was probably just for the culture as well. I've never been there, but it's a lot closer than being in the UK.
Yeah, true. Yeah. So what is it? It's just the culture. What about the culture? The Japanese culture.
It's just the formality to a degree. Yeah. Plus, also they've got some really cool cars over there. All the what I call the JDM type cars. Yeah.
I'm picking up a bit of a theme here. So the cars are a big thing.
Cars. Yeah. Okay. I'd love to go on a proper road trip.
Yeah. So, what in whereabouts?
It would probably be Europe,
right?
In terms of Switzerland and Italy.
Yeah.
So some of the iconic passes, like Stelvio, and a few of the others.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think we might do that ourselves. Actually, when we were living in the UK and our kids were quite young, we used to go camping to the south of France.
Yeah.
And the thing that we did with the kids, which they thought was really exciting, is we stayed not too far away from Monaco. So we woke up in the morning, we had breakfast in France, we drove across to Monaco, had lunch in Monaco, drove from Monaco into San Remo in Italy, had dinner in Italy, and we were actually thinking about we'd just pop up into Switzerland and have a late tea somewhere in Switzerland, but we couldn't get into the pass to get up into Switzerland. There was a massive traffic jam for some reason, so we was in 3 different countries in the space of one day, and the kids thought it was excellent. It was a lot of driving, but it just that's one of the things I really like about being in Europe is everywhere is quite close.
Yeah.
And you can we can do all the travelling we want to do in the car or on the train. Don't have to get in a plane. Yeah. We can take our time, and I think one of the things that really attracts me about retirement is now you go away, you take a holiday, it's 2 weeks, and you have to be back at work.
I know you could have perpetual.
The idea of going somewhere thinking, I quite like this place, I think I'll stay another week, and not having to worry about it is just amazing. It's just, why wouldn't you want to do that?
But it's like, I've got a friend, Alan, who's just retired, and he's got these big plans of everything he's going to do, and it's like it's all mapped out all after he's done like a complete holiday. Yeah. So he's going to Europe and doing all of that. It's like. That's the way to do it. I think
it is. I think you need to. You spend a lot of time working, and I'll be been working for 40 years next year.
Yeah, and it's a long time.
It is a long time. It's a long time. When I say it out loud, it's kind of depressing.
Yeah, well, I've got 3 members of my team. Yeah, was it 4 now? 4 now, and I've actually been working longer than they've been alive.
Yeah, I know.
It's like, no.
I had that experience when we were at ACOM. We had, I can't remember who it was now, somebody coming in talking to us from Engineering New Zealand about how to get chartered, and I was one of the sort of senior people that was involved in organising it. And we had to fill in a form that said what your name was, what your role was, and how many years you've been working. And when I was one of the last ones to fill it in, and I looked at all of the people that put down 9 years, 5 years, 7 years, 4 years, and I was thinking, I'm actually older. I've been working longer than any of you have been alive. Yep. And it's really depressing.
It's so brilliant, isn't it?
But I think the other side of that, though, is that, I think we all have a responsibility as the more sort of senior people is to give stuff back. To try and put back into the industry that has really treated us reasonably well throughout our careers, given us a job. So, I mean, on that subject, are you looking at anything where you're in teaching or mentoring or anything like that?
Yeah. So within where I am at the moment with Tonkin and Taylor, which is a really good company, I really enjoy it, is that I'm a technical director. And part of that is obviously doing technical work in terms of being an expert, but also directing how things should be done.
Yeah.
And giving that tuition to people and mentoring.
Yeah.
And that's important for me because then it eases my workload by delegating and getting other people up to a skill level which is comparable to myself.
Okay.
Because it's like yourself, you're never going to be there the whole of your life.
No.
Nobody's indispensable, so that knowledge has got to be passed on.
It's got to be passed on. And I think that my fear with the industry is that there's a big knowledge gap between us
there is.
and the current generation. And I think it worries me that there's not that many people coming through into the engineering profession generally. It's actually getting harder and harder to recruit. And, we need to find a way of changing that because, what we do, whilst it's not all that glamorous, is really vital for the modern way of life.
Oh yeah,
and we need to be bringing fresh eyes into it and fresh minds into what we do to keep us moving in the right direction, I think.
Yeah, well, within my technical field, it's very limited in terms of people you can actually employ as fresh as graduates, unless you want to actually go through that whole process of getting them up to a reasonable skill level.
Yeah, in terms of that sort of process, when you're looking at bringing somebody in at a graduate level, what sort of background do you want them to have? Is it like a mechanical engineering?
Yeah, so it's a mix. We've got a really good guy, Andrew, up in Auckland now, who's just in his second week, and he's come in mechanical engineering.
Right.
So done a mech eng, and he's got an interest in doing acoustics.
Yep.
Obviously, you've got to understand what acoustics is.
Yep.
Not just apply for any job that's going out there.
Fair enough.
So we've got him. But he'll be on a learning curve.
Yeah.
And that will just be on the job training and tuition as we go through. But we're just about to we've had to recruit overseas to get somebody with a higher skill level.
Yeah.
And he's got 8 years experience, and he's coming from the UK.
Right, okay.
But that's where the formal qualifications are there, but we don't have them here in New Zealand.
No, you don't. I mean, that's the thing, from what I do, the mechanical side of building services, there is no actual qualification in New Zealand.
Yeah.
The mechanical engineering degree is more focused on building engines in cars than it is on building services in buildings.
Yeah.
And I think that's a real challenge because, when you bring somebody on as a graduate, you're effectively starting with somebody who doesn't know anything.
Yeah.
And you put in a lot of time and effort into training them and getting them up to speed. And that's a big investment, and certainly for me as a small business, it's quite hard to justify, and it's also quite a drain on your resources as well because you spend a long time working with that person, and then what you tend to find is you get to the end of their 4-year post-grad training, and then they go and get a job somewhere else.
Yeah, that's
it's like I don't want that.
Yeah, 2 to 4 years is like time for a change, and that's kind of accepted in the norm for grads.
It is. But when you're a small employer, that's a massive investment for no return, really, and it's something that I don't know how we deal with it. I'm very keen to be involved in that sort of training side of things with students, and I've been a mentor at UC for a couple of years, not prior to COVID, not since COVID has happened, unfortunately, but that's something I want to get back into because I think we've got a lot of grey hair, which means we've been around a little while.
Yeah, you've got the experience and the
got the experience.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
No, I'm fully supportive of that. It's something I find in terms of just because acoustics is very, very specialist.
Yeah.
And some of the areas which I specialise in, which is aviation wise.
Yeah.
That's even more specialist.
Yeah. And it's a specialism within a specialism within a specialism.
And then I deal with defence work still, and that's even So
are you dealing with the NZDF at all?
Yeah, so that's one of my clients as such. So I do work with them.
Yeah.
Some of it's sensitive, some of it's just general, what I call acoustics when it comes to things like working on plan change.
Yeah.
Or just reviewing a plan that's coming through, or an application around a military establishment.
Right. Okay.
So it's
cool. Just going back into your work history a little bit, is there a sort of a decision or something that you did during your career that you wish you hadn't, or do you think that most of the stuff that you've done?
I think it was going to a company that I'm not going to name names on the companies, but I did I'm in for the long term. So I did 11 years with the Ministry of Defence.
Yep.
Then I did 10 years with my next employer.
Yep.
And then I did 10 months with the next one. So you can see what's coming there.
So that 10 months maybe
that 10 months probably wasn't the best. Yeah. I was kind of financially persuaded, let's put it that way, with a few big carrots on the end of a stick.
Yeah.
And probably wasn't the right decision.
Right.
But saying that, those 10 months was, at the end of those 10 months, I then came out here.
Right.
So it wasn't a long-term issue, but it's just...
Would you say you learnt anything from that experience?
Yeah, I think it really bolsters this thing about your team that you work with.
Yeah.
So I was working in a Manchester office, which was a satellite office of the main one.
Yeah.
And there was myself and one other person. Yeah. And that was it for the team.
Right.
So it didn't have... The social interaction is important to me.
Yeah.
So even though we've got flexible working and everything, I'm usually in the office 4 to 5 days a week. Yeah. Just to have that interaction. Yeah. And I think when I had that 10 months, that lack of support and also just bouncing ideas off your colleague at the desk. Yeah. That's important.
Quite hard. Yeah. I mean, I found that certainly with the lockdowns here in New Zealand during COVID that actually working from home, whilst most of what I can do from home, I found it harder to focus. Yeah. Because I'm used to that environment, like you say, where there's more people around you and you're sort of talking about things and you're making decisions and bouncing ideas off people all the time. And having to deliberately arrange to do a Zoom call or a Teams meeting or whatever it may be to have that interaction just took away quite a lot of the sort of spontaneity and innovation type stuff. You know, you just when you're sort of freewheeling through things and sort of not quite stream of consciousness, but just talking about an idea and just as it grows, it becomes something else. Yeah. And that sort of lack of that interaction, I think, was the hardest thing for me. That, you know, I don't mind working from home. I do it quite regularly now, but I like having the office and the team in the office so that, you know, if I want to talk about something, I can do that face to face, and it's a lot easier for me to do that, I think. It's
the best way for people to learn as well, just that one-to-one interaction.
Yeah, I think you're right.
We've got a relatively young team, which is they're older now, they're growing. Yeah. And 2019, 2020, that was a difficult period. Yeah. Or 2020 when lockdown occurred completely. Yeah. So the way we worked around that is basically having almost a team meeting each day. Yeah, that's what we were doing. Yeah, we'd have a Teams meeting, like sort of 10 or 15 minutes, I think, Monday, Wednesday and Friday. Yeah. And the idea was just to keep the regular interaction so that we were talking to one another. And it just sort of helped keep us a bit better focused and you know, so that we didn't sort of lose track of who we were, really. Yeah. But it was quite challenging. You know, I don't know how the people in Auckland managed it when they were locked down for such a long time. You know, it must have been horrendous. Although I was talking to somebody yesterday and he said to me he really enjoyed the lockdown because he could work from home and he loved working from home. And he would stop around about lunchtime and go for a swim and then come back to work, and it's just really great. And I think, well, okay, that's fine. If you could do that, that's amazing, you know. But you know, I think it depends on the sort of work and the sort of individual.
Does, yeah, absolutely, it does. Yeah. I mean, would you say that as you've got older that your perspective has changed at all, or do you think that you've still kind of got the same view of things as when you were a youngster?
I probably settled down a bit more, going on work-life balance.
Right.
So. Used to do crazy hours. Yeah. Classic being that when my son was born, I went back to work after a week, whereas I could have taken longer. Yeah. And that was just, and I'm completely missed that, and I feel really guilty not being around when he was really young and just learning. Yeah. So that's a negative thing. Yeah. But now, obviously, being a bit more flexible and the whole process of being a bit more senior as well.
Yeah. You've got more control over your destiny, I guess.
Yeah, and I tell this to the team as well in terms of, you know, if the family needs you, you go into the family. The work doesn't need you. We can work around it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's certainly something I would say I've learned that you know, when I remember that I was working stupid hours because I was commuting into central London from the home counties, travelling for 2 hours each way every day, and then doing an 8 to 10 hour day, and then getting home. You know, going into work before the kids woke up and getting home after they'd gone to bed. So I didn't really see them for probably the first 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, same for me. I used to do 2.5 hour commute back and forth, combined commute to Manchester. Yeah. Whereas when I moved to Christchurch.
Yeah, I know.
15 20 minutes. It's like bliss.
Yeah. That's the. I mean, it is great from that perspective. You know, I can't. I just think I was thinking a couple of days ago that if I had the house that I've got now here in Christchurch, in Auckland, for example, that was 15 minutes from where I worked, it would probably be worth about $4.5 million.
Yeah.
But you know, in Christchurch, it's much more affordable, and it does make the city a much more attractive place, I think. And you know, the idea of not having that long commute is the main reason I like being here. Is that I know that, you know, anywhere I want to get to, I can get there within about 15 or 20 minutes, really.
Yeah, well, today on the news was saying about a vehicle fire or something, and it just basically closed the whole of the network down. Yeah, and it's like, I don't want that. I can guarantee, Steve, when I leave my house, I can get to work within a set time. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, and it's just being on a bike as well. Yeah, you're a lot more flexible, I think. Yeah. Dodge around the traffic a bit. I could do that on the motorbike, but I don't do that anymore. So we talked about places you want to go. So there's Banff. I think you said Antarctica and Japan. Is there anywhere else that's on your bucket list? I've done most places in Europe.
Have you?
Yeah, I've done the US quite a bit. Yeah. Scandinavia.
Yeah.
South America, never been to.
Any desire? No, not really.
I don't think so.
No? Okay.
Yeah. I did do, in terms of Australia, but it's like Northern Australia, Northern Territory, possibly.
I mean, Australia, for me, is a place of danger, mostly.
Things that can kill you.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I know. I've got a very old friend of mine, as in someone I've known a long time, who lives in Sydney. And we'd always been told when we came to New Zealand that the snakes don't go into the cities. If you go into the cities, you're fine over there. And I was speaking to Leslie, this girl that I've known from college, and she said, you know, there was a few weeks before that she'd driven the kids home from school, pulled up outside her drive and saw a brown snake on the driveway. So she just drove away, phoned the animal people to come and get the brown snake. And she was living about 20 minutes from the centre of Sydney. It's like, yeah, they get there. If they want to get there, they're going to get there. And, you know, it's just... And brown snakes, you don't muck around with brown snakes. You've got like something like 5 or 10 minutes to get the antivenom in you before you die.
Perhaps I'll put my visit to the Northern Territory off then.
I would recommend not cycling through the bush.
No. Well, kangaroos are dangerous anyway.
Well, yeah, I don't know if you remember, who was it? Was it Rowan? It was Rowan Peck, actually. I don't know if I told you the story, but he was a guy I used to work with at NDY here in New Zealand, and he moved over to the Australian Capital Territories, and he was cycling one lunchtime, and he got hit by a kangaroo. He reckoned he was doing about 45 or 50 kilometres an hour on a downhill, and the kangaroo came across the road and went straight into the side of him. Didn't take any notice of the fact he was there, and he broke his pelvis in 3 places, and he was lying on the road unable to move for about 3 hours before somebody came along to find him.
That's the problem.
Couldn't reach his phone because his phone was metres away because it had just flown out of his pocket, and he said it was just, you know, he thought he was going to, that was it, he was dead, and he ended up in hospital. I think he was in hospital for about 4 months in traction, trying to get his pelvis to fit right together again. Just like
sympathy.
See, everything over there wants to hurt you.
Yeah, including the traffic as well. The traffic's worse than it.
Yeah, true.
Those drivers.
That is true.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Is there anything else you wanted to talk through today, or have we covered off most of the things?
I think just from a work ethic type of thing. Yeah, I'm always like, there's give and take as well. Yeah. So, you know, you're talking about in terms of mentoring and passing it on to people. I think it's important to actually get over to people that, you know, work isn't just being at your desk for 12 hours a day and doing the same thing. You've got to innovate to a certain degree, but you've got to enjoy it as well. Yeah.
I mean, one of the things I was trying to do when we were working together is when we had graduates come in, I spoke to all of the other departments and said what I'd really love to do is get the graduates that we've got coming in to spend a month in each of the teams. Yeah, yeah. And just, you know, maybe nothing that they want to work in. So you get guys working for the project management team, and they'd come in and work with the services guys, and then they go and work with the acoustics guys and structural. And I said I thought it was a good idea to do that because you don't work in isolation. And I think one of the big drawbacks I see in the way that New Zealand works is there's quite a silo mentality about how our sort of design work is done. And one way of breaking that down is getting people to see what the other people that they're working with actually do. And I thought the idea of working with people, in every department for a little while would hopefully allow for some cross-pollination, maybe give you a better understanding of what the other people around the table do. And ACOM was a good place to do that because you had pretty much every single discipline you were ever going to encounter there. But it didn't really get any traction, unfortunately.
We'd certainly do that with TNT. We have interns, summer interns, and they get distributed, and it's like, I'd like you to do some work, and you go into the pool of people and you can take them.
Yeah. Oh, that's excellent.
And I've got my new guy in Auckland. He's going to do some waste management work.
Okay.
So it gives him a bit of an appreciation of WIDA. Which is good for us because it gives a bit of exposure to those teams that
absolutely
we've got good people.
Okay. And I don't know if I'm not sure if I've actually asked this question, but if you would look back on your career to date, what would you say was your proudest achievement?
I think it would have to be working for Quintain in London.
Yeah.
So Quintain was a multi-billion-dollar property developer.
Okay.
And if you think of the Wembley Stadium,
the
new Wembley Stadium, they've done all the development work around the stadium.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I was the acoustic planning advisor for Quintain.
Oh, excellent.
So effectively, anything that you see around the site of the Wembley Stadium,
from an acoustic
I had my finger in.
Wow.
So in terms of all,
that's a major project.
Yeah, it's $billion-dollar, £billion development.
Yeah.
So the Wembley Arena, Wembley Stadium, all the facilities, the Hilton Hotel.
Oh, wow.
So I did all the planning acoustics work for that and some of the design work as well. So
fantastic.
I think just from a lasting legacy, it's probably one of those.
Well, it's a massive venue, isn't it? And a really important venue for the UK sport. So
and it's also international as well in terms of entertainment, concerts and everything.
True. There. Yeah, they do have some pretty big acts there, don't they?
Yeah.
Well, that's very good. Okay, well, thank you very much, Darran. It's been great talking to you.
Excellent.
I've really enjoyed the conversation, and hopefully other people listening to it will enjoy it as well.
Yeah, and hopefully not too much of the Brummie accent came across.
Oh, I don't think there's a problem with that. It's nice to have diverse accents on this podcast.
Absolutely,
for sure.
Diversity.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
thank you very much. And I'll speak to you soon. Cheers, Darran.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to my podcast, A Penny for Your Thoughts, with me, Steve Penny. I hope you've enjoyed today's conversation, and I look forward to sharing my next conversation with you. If you want to find out some more, please do get in touch, and maybe we can have you on in a future show. Thank you.